"Greetings, traveler. I'm glad to see you in my tavern. Here you may rest after a hard road, drink a mug of good ale, and listen to an old, honest witcher's tale, one that smells of smoke, winding roads, and silver coins." The wind carried a bitter chill across the meadows north of Redania, where the long road wound between frozen streams and leafless birch trees. Crows perched on bare branches, their cries echoing against the gray sky. Geralt of Rivia, the white wolf, rode in silence, his cloak drawn close around his shoulders, roaches' hooves crunching over the frost-hardened ground. The road was long, and so was the weariness. The Witcher's medallion shivered faintly from time to time, humming with distant traces of magic that clung to the land like smoke after battle. Behind him rode a man who, despite the cold, would not stop singing. Dandelion's voice, clear and lilting, danced over the empty plain. "The wind blows cold, but love grows bold, and maidens dream of heroes old," he sang, flourishing the final note with theatrical bravado. "Dandelion," Geralt muttered, "stop before something decides to eat you just to silence you." The bard only grinned. "Admit it, Witcher. My songs make these desolate roads more bearable." "They make them louder," Geralt replied. The two companions had been riding for days, following vague rumors that had reached them through wandering merchants and frightened refugees. Tales of a cursed village where dreams had come alive, where travelers vanished, and songs of enchantment drifted on the night air. Normally, Geralt would have avoided such nonsense, but coin was low, and his wounds from the last hunt had long since healed. Besides, a witcher had to work to keep from thinking too much, and Geralt had many thoughts he preferred not to face. As the sun sank, the horizon turned the color of dying embers. Ahead, faint smoke rose from a cluster of cottages huddled beneath a low hill. The village, Lauren Vale, according to Dandelion's scribbled notes, looked weary, beaten down by war and winter alike. When they entered, no children played, no laughter drifted from windows. Faces watched from behind shutters. At the center of the village stood a shrine of Melitele, worn smooth by years of touch. Beside it waited a man in a tattered cloak. The alderman, judging by his stance and the wary respect of those who lingered behind him, he bowed stiffly. "Witcher, you've come. Thank the gods." Geralt dismounted. "You sent for me?" "We sent word, yes," the man said, wringing his hands. "Folk said witchers hunt monsters. We have a curse." Dandelion looked around. "Curses monsters to spare. Splendid. Just what I needed for my next ballad." The alderman ignored him. 3 men gone, all brave. They went to the old keep on the hill. Never returned. There's music at night, lights, and dreams that don't end come morning. Geralt's eyes narrowed. "Dreams?" The man nodded quickly. "Strange ones. Everyone's plagued by them. They see a woman, sleeping pale as snow, locked behind glass. Some wake crying, some don't wake at all. My wife hasn't slept for 2 nights, afraid she'll not wake if she does." "Tell me about the keep," Geralt said. "It's old, from elf times, they say. Been empty longer than anyone remembers. But last spring, a traveler passed through, a woman, cloaked, eyes like ice. She went up there. Since then, nothing's been right." Geralt's medallion stirred against his chest again. Magic, faint but constant. Old magic, dangerous magic. He sighed. "I'll go up at dawn." The alderman bowed again, relief warring with fear in his eyes. "We'll pay what little we can. I'll take coin, Geralt said, and food for my horse. Dandelion stepped forward, brushing imaginary dust from his doublet, and lodging for the bard, a warm hearth and something to drink, preferably with a pleasant hostess. The alderman glanced at him as though uncertain whether to laugh or pray. We'll find you both a place. That night, the village seemed to sleep under a veil of dread. Geralt sat by a low fire outside the barn they had been given, cleaning his swords. It was not silent. It whispered through the trees like breath through teeth. Somewhere far off, a note of song drifted, faint and inhumanly pure, a woman's voice, mournful and strange. Roach shifted uneasily. The medallion trembled again. Music in the night, Dandelion murmured from the doorway, his earlier cheer subdued. I don't like it. You like anything that doesn't involve applause? Geralt asked dryly, sheathing his steel sword. This is different, Dandelion said, lowering his voice. That voice, it sounded almost calling. Geralt didn't answer. He looked toward the dark shape of the keep, rising above the hills, its broken towers etched against the moon. The air smelled faintly of burnt herbs and ozone, remnants of magic. Somewhere, something ancient waited. The wind carried the last faint echo of the song again, and Geralt's thoughts turned briefly to another woman, one whose blood bound her to powers older than men's understanding. Ciri. Always Ciri. He pushed the thought aside and stood. Get some sleep, Dandelion. The bard hesitated, then nodded. You'll wake me if you need help? Geralt gave him a look. Dandelion sighed. Right, I'll guard the ale then. The Witcher smiled faintly, a rare, fleeting thing, then turned back to the fire. The embers crackled softly, their light catching the wolf medallion at his throat. Beyond the village, the ruined keep loomed like a jagged tooth against the stars. Geralt watched it for a long time, until the night swallowed all color and the last whisper of song faded into silence. Tomorrow, he thought, he would climb that hill. Tomorrow the fairy tale would begin. Dawn broke gray and uncertain over Lauren Vale, the sun a pale disk behind sheets of mist. The chill of the night still clung to the ground, turning every blade of grass into silver glass. Geralt rose early as always, his movements quiet and deliberate. The barn smelled of roach snorted softly as he tightened the saddle straps, her breath rising in clouds. Dandelion stumbled from beneath a pile of blankets, his hair a wild halo. Is it morning already? He groaned. You know, not all of us were bred to greet the sunrise like zealots. Geralt ignored him, adjusting the harness. Stay in the village. Keep your loot close and your mouth shut. Ah, so the usual plan, Dandelion muttered, rubbing his eyes. But if you die, who will appreciate my next song? Geralt looked over his shoulder. Write a short one. The bard grumbled but didn't argue further. Geralt swung into the saddle and turned Roach toward the north road, where the mist thickened and the shadow of the keep lay like a wound on the hill. The path wound between frost-crusted trees. The forest here was old, the trunks thick and gnarled, the air heavy with the scent of decay. Birds did not sing. Even the crows had gone silent. Geralt's medallion thrummed lightly at his neck, a steady rhythm that told him the magic here was not new. It was deep-rooted, tangled into the soil itself, like the roots of an ancient tree. When he reached the base of the hill, he dismounted. The keep loomed above Iyo, a ruin of white stone streaked with moss and shadow, its towers broken like snapped bones. The gates hung crooked, one half buried in the earth. A wind sighed through the gaps, carrying a faint sound, not quite music, not quite whisper. Geralt drew his silver sword. The air shimmered faintly, as if the world itself held its breath. The courtyard beyond was littered with bones, human mostly. Rusted armor lay scattered like autumn leaves. The Witcher knelt by one of the corpses. The steel helm was cleaved open, but not by blade. The edges were melted, fused together by some immense heat. "Fire magic," he murmured. He straightened and moved deeper into the ruins. Signs of illusion shimmered faintly in the corners of his vision. Flickers of motion that vanished when he turned his head. A woman's laughter drifted faintly down a crumbling corridor. "Show yourself," he said softly. No answer came. Only that faint laughter again and the scent of lilac and gooseberries. A perfume that made him freeze. For a moment, memory pierced him. Yennefer, her voice, her presence, her scent. But no, this was not her. The air tasted wrong, sweet but corrupted. He advanced slowly, casting the sign of R to scatter the illusion. The air rippled and the corridor twisted, revealing a grand hall beyond. Pillars carved with elven runes, walls gleaming with faint, unreal light. And there she was, the sleeping maiden. She lay upon a dais of stone, her body encased in a shimmer like glass, her hair spread around her like a spill of silver. Her face was perfect, unmoving, her eyes closed as though in dream. The faint glow of a spell circled her body like mist. Geralt approached cautiously. The medallion trembled violently now. He could feel her pulse, not through touch, but through magic itself, alive, asleep, dreaming. He knelt beside her and examined the runes. Old language, NL, the tongue of elves, who had long vanished from this world. The words spoke of binding, of imprisonment, but also of doorways. He frowned. Whoever had woven this spell had meant to trap her, not to protect her. The silence broke. A voice cold and melodic echoed around the hall. "You shouldn't be here, Witcher." Geralt rose, his sword half lifted. "I hear that often?" The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. "Leave or share their fate." The air shimmered again. The corpses in the courtyard, they stirred. Bone cracked, armor groaned, and from the shadows stumbled the dead, their eyes lit with pale blue fire. Geralt's blade flashed. The first wraith lunged, and he met it with a swift arc. Silver sliced. The second fell beneath Igni, fire bursting from his hand in a roar of heat. But more came, too many. He retreated to the dais, spinning, striking, parrying. Each kill dissolved into ash and whisper, but they kept coming. He muttered a curse and raised Quen, a golden shield of energy flashing into being around him. The storm broke. Then, as swiftly as it had come, the magic faltered. The corpses fell still. Silence reclaimed the hall. From the shadows near the dais, the figure of a woman took form, tall, slender, cloaked in starlight. Her skin glowed faintly blue, her eyes luminous as moons. "You fight well," she said, her voice like a distant bell, "but you fight for the wrong side." Geralt kept his sword raised. "And what side is that?" "Mine," she said simply. "I am bound here, betrayed, cursed by those who feared what I knew." She stepped closer, the shimmer of her body wavering like smoke. "Free me, Witcher, and I will reward you. Gold, power, even knowledge of the one you seek." His grip tightened. "What do you know of her?" The woman smiled faintly. "The child of the elder blood. She walks between worlds. I have seen her in dreams. I can tell you where the hunt rides." For a moment, silence stretched between them. "Tell me your name," Geralt said at last. "I had many," she replied. but you may call me Aeliren." The name struck a chord, a ghost from the past, an elven hero who had died centuries ago, a name out of legend. "You lie," he said. She only smiled. "Perhaps, but the truth lies behind the glass. Break it, Witcher, and you will see." He looked at the shimmering barrier again. He could feel the pull of her power, ancient and cold, and beneath it the faint hum of a portal spell. Broken, unstable. If he shattered it, he might free her, or destroy half the valley. He lowered his sword slowly. "Not yet." Her eyes glowed brighter. "Then sleep, Witcher. Sleep and dream." Her hand rose, the air thickened. He leapt aside, rolling as a wave of energy shattered the floor where he had stood. The hall exploded into shards of illusion, walls fading, light twisting. He stumbled into darkness, his head ringing, the sound of her laughter following him into the void. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the hall. He stood in a forest of silver trees, beneath a violet sky. A dream, a spell, a prison of another kind. And somewhere ahead, a woman's song began again, soft, beautiful, and full of sorrow. Geralt clenched his jaw and moved toward it. Whatever fairy tale this was, it was about to turn ugly. The forest shimmered like a reflection upon still water. Every leaf glowed faintly with a silver sheen, and the air carried the scent of rain, though no cloud stirred above. Geralt's boots sank into soft moss that seemed to pulse faintly beneath each step, alive with some secret rhythm. The Witcher drew his steel sword, though instinct told him the blade would do little good here. This was no ordinary illusion. It was a crafted dream, solid, tangible, a cage woven from memory and magic. Somewhere within it, the elven sorceress was watching. He advanced through the mist, senses straining. His medallion was silent now, useless in this place. Every sound, the rustle of branches, the distant murmur of water, seemed deliberate, as though the forest itself were breathing around him. Then he heard it again, the song. A woman's voice, clear and mournful, drifted through the trees. The melody wound like smoke, half lullaby, half lament. He followed it cautiously, stepping over roots as thick as serpents. The light dimmed, and the forest gave way to a glade filled with still water. At its center stood a figure, the sorceress, Aeliren, her image reflected perfectly upon the mirrored surface of the pool. She turned to face him, her eyes bright as stars. "You are persistent, Witcher. You brought me here to show you the truth," she said softly. "You think yourself hunter and judge, slayer of monsters. Yet tell me, when have you last looked at what you kill?" He scowled. "I kill what threatens the innocent." She smiled sadly. "Innocent? You've seen too much to believe in that word." The air rippled. The reflection in the pool changed. Suddenly, the still surface showed not her, but a familiar face. A young woman with ashen hair, green eyes, fierce as fire. Ciri. Geralt froze. "She walks paths you cannot follow," Aeliren murmured. "Each step takes her closer to what she was born for. Do you know what that is, Witcher?" His fingers tightened on the hilt. Enough tricks. But the image spoke. Ciri's voice, soft, frightened. "Geralt, please help me." He lunged forward, reaching out, and the illusion shattered. The pool erupted in a flash of light, and he stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. When his vision cleared, he was no longer in the glade. The world had changed again. Now he stood in a throne room of black marble. Fire burned in suspended braziers. Figures lined the hall, elven knights in silver armor, their faces hidden behind visors, and upon the throne sat Ellerin, regal and terrible, crowned with light. "This," she said, gesturing around her, "is what your kind destroyed, the elder world, the realm of my people. You call us monsters, yet you are the ones who tore down our cities and hunted our children." Geralt's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "That world is gone." "Gone," she echoed, her tone turning sharp, "but not forgotten. They built your kingdoms on our bones, and when we sought to flee to cross the veil between worlds, your sorcerers sealed the gates." Her gaze fixed on him, burning. "I was one who tried to open them again. The spell failed. My body was caught between places, neither living nor dead. They called it a curse, but I called it exile. You tried to open a portal between worlds." "Yes, and I would do so again," she said, "because only there, beyond the stars, can my people be free." He shook his head. "You tear this land apart to get there. You don't understand what the veil is. You'd bring the hunt through." At that, her expression flickered. "The hunt comes regardless. They are drawn to power, to her, to your daughter of destiny." Geralt's heart clenched, though he kept his face impassive. Ellerin rose from the throne. Her form shimmered, and for an instant she looked less like a spirit and more like a woman. Weary, desperate, beautiful. "Free me, Witcher. Let me finish what I began. I can give you the path to her. The places between worlds are open to me, even now." "And when you're free," he asked, "what happens to the village below? To everyone sleeping under your spell?" Her silence was answer enough. He stepped forward, his tone cold. "You've bound their minds. You feed on their dreams to stay alive. You're no savior, Ellerin. You're a parasite." Her eyes flared with light. The hall trembled. "You would call me monster? After what your kind has done?" Geralt raised a sword. "I don't judge by kind, only by choice." The sorceress screamed. The marble cracked beneath his feet, the world twisting. He braced himself, but the dream shattered again. He fell through light, through cold, and hit stone. The air rushed from his lungs. When he staggered up, he was back in the real world, within the crumbling ruins of the keep. Dust rained from the ceiling. The crystal prison still glowed on the dais, unchanged. Only now he saw movement within. The woman inside was awake. Her eyes, impossibly blue, were open, fixed on him through the shimmering barrier. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming words he couldn't hear. Then, with a single pulse of light, the barrier darkened, turning from glass to obsidian. Geralt stepped closer. The medallion on his chest, whatever link had existed between their worlds, was fraying. From the doorway came a familiar voice. "Geralt, are you alive, or do I start writing the elegy?" Dandelion appeared, clutching his lute and gasping for breath. I heard the earth shaking halfway across the village. Geralt wiped the sweat and ash from his brow. "Still alive?" The bard peered around nervously. "By the gods, what happened here? It looks like a dragon sneezed." "Something worse," Geralt said. He walked past Dandelion toward the open air, the dawn once again pale and cold. Behind them the keep groaned as if in pain. "Tell me," Dandelion said after a moment, "what did you see in there?" Geralt paused at the threshold, looking back once more at the dark tower. The wind carried faint whispers like fragments of the song he had heard in the night. "Fairy tales," he said quietly. "The kind that never end well." Dandelion blinked. "Then what now?"
We ride to Cadwyn, Geralt answered. There's more to this curse, and someone's pulling the strings. Eliren isn't the only one who knows about the hunt. The bard swallowed hard, but managed a crooked smile. Ah, splendid. Another journey filled with death, dread, and my poor nerves. Remind me why I travel with you again? Geralt allowed himself a faint smirk, because without me you'd have no songs left to write. They set off down the slope, the morning mist rising behind them. Above, the keep stood silent once more, its stones gleaming faintly in the first light of dawn. Yet somewhere deep within its walls, behind the blackened glass of the broken spell, a pair of blue eyes watched them go. And though the Witcher could not hear it, a voice whispered softly through the cracks of the dying magic, a promise, or perhaps a curse. We will meet again, White Wolf. The road from Lauren Vale wound eastward through the winter barren fields. The frost clung to the stubble of last year's harvest, and the wind moved through it like a whisper from the grave. Geralt and Dandelion rode in silence, the clop of hooves the only rhythm to the morning. The bard, uncharacteristically quiet, was wrapped in his cloak, eyes fixed on the horizon. At last he spoke. I keep thinking about that woman. Eliren, you called her. She looked like something out of a song, not a nightmare. Geralt didn't turn. Songs rarely show the teeth. I'm aware, Dandelion said dryly. Still, she didn't seem evil. Not at first. She wasn't, Geralt replied. Once. He glanced at the road ahead, but power's a disease. Once it settles in the blood, it never leaves. You'd be surprised how often good intentions rot into horror. Dandelion sighed, his breath fogging in the cold air. Then what happens to her now? She's trapped in that keep, dreaming herself into madness? She's not trapped anymore, Geralt said. The barrier's broken, even if the body still lies there. She'll find another way to reach out. The bard shivered and crossed himself. You make that sound rather inconvenient. It will be, Geralt said simply. By midday they reached the crossroads. A half-collapsed stone shrine marked with an old signpost. One road led north toward Cadwyn, another south toward Redania. Geralt dismounted, checking the tracks in the mud. Several wagons had passed recently, but deeper grooves made by armored boots caught his eye. Fresh, organized. Soldiers, he muttered. Whose? Dandelion asked. Cadweni, maybe, or mercenaries. Either way, trouble. He crouched, brushing frost from the ground. A faint residue shimmered beneath his fingers, the telltale trace of magic. Someone had used a portal nearby not long ago. The scent of ozone still lingered. Geralt rose slowly. Not just soldiers. Dandelion looked uneasy. More sorcery. Yes, powerful. They pressed on, following the tracks northward, and the trees grew thick here, tall pines black against the pale sky. The world became quieter, the air colder. By the time the light began to fade, Geralt had already drawn his steel sword. They weren't alone. The forest watched them. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle too deliberate. Roach's ears flicked back. She snorted, uneasy. Geralt stopped, raising a hand. Stay still. What is it? Dandelion whispered. Hunters, Geralt said softly. And not the human kind. An arrow hissed past his head, thudding into a tree. The Witcher rolled, grabbing Dandelion and pulling him behind the trunk. Another arrow struck where the bard had stood moments before. Then voices, elvish, sharp, and cold, called out from the shadows. Geralt recognized the tongue of the Scoia'tael. Elves, he murmured, militant ones.
A figure stepped from behind the trees, lean, tall, face painted in the red streaks of rebellion. He held a bow drawn, the arrow aimed squarely at Geralt's chest. "You reek of human blood, Witcher," the elf spat, "and the bard beside you reeks of cowardice." Dandelion bristled. "Cowardice? I'll have you know I've faced down wyverns, drowners, and one rather rude princess." "Dandelion," Geralt cut him off sharply. "Quiet." The elf's eyes narrowed. "What business brings you to these woods?" Geralt met his gaze evenly. "Following a curse, one that might spill into your lands if left alone." The bowstring creaked tighter. "A convenient excuse." Another elf stepped forward, older, his armor less adorned, but his posture commanding. He motioned for the bow to lower. "Enough, Ilarion. He speaks truth, perhaps. Witchers hunt monsters. But tell me, what kind of monster bleeds magic onto our road?" Geralt considered his words. "A woman, N.L., calls herself Aeliren." The older elf stiffened. "Aeliren?" Geralt nodded. "So you know the name." The elves exchanged uneasy glances. "That name is sacred among us. The name of the last warrior maiden of the elves of Dol Blathana. But she died long ago." "She did?" Geralt said. "This one only borrowed it?" The older elf's expression darkened. "Borrowed or returned?" Before Geralt could answer, a low rumble passed through the forest. The ground trembled, the trees shivered, and a strange light flared briefly in the north. Pale blue, like the shimmer of frozen fire. The elves reacted instantly, muttering in their tongue. "She opens the gate again," one whispered. Geralt turned toward the light. The same magic he'd felt in the keep, but stronger now, free from its prison. "She's trying to finish the spell," he said. "She'll tear the veil open." The elven leader's voice was grim. "Then she'll bring death to all, elf and human alike." Geralt sheathed his sword and mounted Roach. "Then you'd better help me stop her." For a moment, silence. The elves looked to their leader. Then he nodded once. "We will guide you. The source lies beyond the veil, near the ruins of Terna's cross. But if you betray us, Witcher—" "I won't," Geralt said. "I'm not here to pick sides." The elf gave a bitter smile. "In this world, there are only sides." They set off through the forest, moving quickly. The trees thinned as night fell, the path opening to a wide valley where old ruins stood like broken teeth. The air hummed with power. Geralt could see the flicker of blue light rising from a circle of stones in the distance. "She's there," he said quietly. Dandelion swallowed. "And what exactly is she doing?" "Opening a door that should stay closed," Geralt replied. They reached the ridge overlooking the ruins. At the center stood Aeliren, or what remained of her. Her body shimmered like mist, half spirit, half flame. Around her, glyphs of ancient light burned in the ground, pulsing with a heartbeat not her own. Geralt's medallion thrummed wildly. The air itself felt alive. He could see the outline of something vast moving behind her, shapes of riders on spectral horses, cloaked in frost and shadow. The wild hunt. "Dandelion," Geralt said, never looking away from the scene below. "If things go wrong, run." "They always do," the bard whispered. Geralt drew his silver sword and started down the slope. The elves followed in silence, their bows ready, their faces pale with fear. The Witcher could feel the pull of the magic, drawing him closer. The runes flared brighter as he approached. Aeliren turned toward him, her eyes burned with impossible light. "You cannot stop what has begun," she said. "The worlds are calling to one another." "I've heard that before," Geralt said. "This is destiny, Witcher," she hissed. Yours, hers, mine, bound together. He stopped just outside the circle of runes. The ground vibrated under his boots. Destiny's just a word men use when they've lost control. With a roar, she lifted her hands. The portal flared open, a wound in the air itself. Ice and wind burst forth, carrying the distant cries of spectral hounds. Geralt lunged, the silver blade catching the light, and the battle began. The clash of magic and steel beneath a sky ripped open by power, and through the storm faintly, like a whisper between worlds, he heard another voice, young, familiar, terrified. Geralt? Ciri's voice. He struck harder, the fury of a father's heart guiding his blade. The long road of fairy tales had brought him here to the edge of nightmare, and he would not let it end in tragedy. The wind screamed like a living thing as the rift widened. Aeliren's figure, wreathed in blue fire, floated above the stone circle. Her arms were raised high, her hair whipping like pale flame in the maelstrom. The air stank of ozone and frost, and the sky above the valley twisted, black clouds swirling around a growing wound of light. Geralt moved, his cloak tore, his medallion clattered violently against his chest, and his teeth ached with the surge of magic. The elves behind him loosed arrows, their shafts bursting into sparks before they could strike the sorceress. The runes carved into the stones flared brighter with each heartbeat. She's drawing from the conjunction, shouted the elven leader over the howling wind. She's tearing at the seam that binds our worlds together. Geralt didn't reply. He could feel the hunt pressing against the breach, vast and patient as an incoming tide. Figures moved beyond the light, shadows on horseback, cloaked in mist, their eyes like coals. Every instinct screamed that if the portal opened even a breath wider, the riders would pour through and the world would drown in their cold. He hurled the sign of Ard, a blast of concussive force that shattered one of the rune stones and broke the flow of energy for a moment. Aeliren shrieked. The blue fire faltered, and the ground trembled violently, cracks spreading through the circle like veins of light. You cannot stop it, she cried, her voice echoing as if spoken through many throats at once. I am the bridge, the gate, the dream of the elder folk made flesh. Then it's time for you to wake, Geralt said and charged. The gale struck him like a wall, but he pushed through, each step deliberate, measured. His silver sword gleamed, coated in Yrden's faint violet shimmer. The runes at his feet burned as he crossed them, slicing through the web of energy one thread at a time. Aeliren's eyes widened with fury. She unleashed a surge of power that hurled him backward, slamming him into a shattered pillar. Pain exploded through his ribs. He rolled, barely avoiding a lance of white flame that scorched the ground where he had lain. The elves loosed another volley, arrows enchanted with simple charms, their tips glowing green. Aeliren deflected. Children of the forest, she sneered. You betray your own blood for the sake of men? The older elf shouted back, his voice raw. You are no kin of ours. The Aeliren we honor died with honor, not with madness. She laughed, a sound sharp and terrible. Honor? What has honor bought you but extinction? Geralt was on his feet again. He dashed forward, slashing through the air, forcing her to retreat a step. Their powers clashed, her spell colliding with the edge of his blade, sparks flying in all directions. The impact rippled through the valley, toppling stones and driving the elves to their knees. Then, above the chaos, came that voice again, soft, distant, unmistakable. Geralt. He froze. For a heartbeat, the storm fell silent in his mind. He turned toward the portal. Through the churning light, a figure flickered. A girl, her hair silver white, her eyes bright with terror. Ciri. She stood on the other side, reaching toward him, and in that instant the world around him ceased to exist. Ciri, he shouted, stepping toward her. Come through, she called. I can't hold it much longer. He hesitated. His training screamed at him to resist. The voice could be an illusion, another trap, but it felt real. He could see the scar on her cheek, the way she tilted her head when frightened, the tiny tremor in her fingers. Geralt, please. Behind him, Dandelion's voice pierced the roar of the wind. Geralt, don't. Whatever you're seeing, don't trust it. Aelaren smiled, her teeth white against the glow. She calls for you, Witcher. Would you deny her? Geralt's heart hammered. The rift pulsed brighter, the image of Ciri flickering like candlelight. He gritted his teeth. If that's truly her, he said, she'll understand. And with a savage swing, he struck at the nearest rune stone. The silver blade sliced through it cleanly, and the rune's light died. The reaction was instant. The spell faltered. Aelaren screamed. Her form distorted. The portal convulsed, shrinking violently, the image of Ciri dissolving into shards of light. No! The sorceress shrieked. You fool! You've doomed us both! A wave of magic exploded outward, hurling Geralt into the air. He hit the ground hard, his sword spinning away. When he rose, the world around him was dissolving, the ruins crumbling, the air filled with drifting motes of blue fire. Aelaren staggered, her form flickering like a dying flame. Her eyes, still bright, still furious, fixed on him. You think you've stopped me? I will not fade. The gate will open again. She will open it. Her body disintegrated into light, scattering into the wind. The storm ceased. The valley fell silent. For a long time, Geralt simply stood there, listening to his heartbeat. Then he picked up his sword and sheathed it. The elves gathered around him, their faces pale and weary. The leader stepped forward. It is done? For now, Geralt said. She's gone. But her magic remains. It'll seep into the land. The elf nodded grimly. Then this place will never be clean again. Dandelion stumbled down the slope, coughing from the smoke. I thought we were finished for certain, he gasped. What in Melitele's name was that? An echo of the conjunction, Geralt said, a window to another world, and a woman mad enough to try and open it again. The bard shuddered. You have the strangest definition of bedtime stories, my friend. They left the valley before dusk, the elves melting back into the forest. Without a word, Geralt and Dandelion rode until the light died, neither speaking. When they finally stopped near a frozen stream, the Witcher lit a small fire. Dandelion sat across from him, rubbing his hands. You saw her again, didn't you? Geralt looked into the flames. Yes. Was it really her? I don't know. Silence settled between them, broken only by the crackle of wood. The stars appeared slowly above. Bright. After a long time, Dandelion said softly, Every story has its ghosts. Geralt didn't answer. He watched the fire die down to embers, the faint glow reflected in his yellow eyes. Somewhere beyond the horizon, in the shifting paths between worlds, something stirred. He could feel it, like a string, drawn taut, vibrating with unseen tension, a promise, or perhaps a warning. The wild hunt had been near, too near, and if the hunt was moving again, then so was she. He stared into the night, the faint sound of the wind whispering through the reeds, like distant voices. The road stretched ahead, cold, uncertain, endless. Geralt pulled his cloak tighter, reached for Roach's reins, and whispered to the darkness, "Long roads yet, old friend, long roads and fairy tales." And then he mounted, and they rode on into the dark. The frost had deepened by morning. A hard crust of ice glimmered over the fields as the first light crept over the horizon. Geralt rode in silence, his cloak stiff with frost, breath steaming in the pale dawn. Dandelion, huddled behind him on his own weary gelding, muttered curses to the wind that stole every scrap of warmth. They had left the haunted valley behind, but the memory of blue fire still flickered at the edge of thought. Even now the Witcher could feel a faint hum of magic somewhere far off, as though the earth itself remembered what had been done. By midday they came upon a hamlet half buried in snow, a scattering of huts clustered around a frozen pond. Smoke rose weakly from one chimney, the rest cold and abandoned. Geralt guided Roach toward the only sign of life, an inn with its shutters half torn, the sign swinging crookedly in the wind. The innkeeper was a broad, red-nosed man who looked surprised to see anyone at all. "Travelers?" he grunted. "Haven't seen any in weeks." "The roads are cursed. You'd be wise to turn back." Geralt stepped inside, the warmth of the fire wrapping around him like a cloak. "Curses are my trade." Dandelion followed, stamping his boots and rubbing his hands. "And I'm his witness chronicler and occasional inspiration. Ale, if you have it. Hot, preferably." The innkeeper frowned, but he poured 2 mugs of something that steamed and smelled faintly of apples. "You're heading north, then? Fool's errand, that. Cadwin's lands are crawling with patrols. No one passes without a writ from the king's men." Geralt sipped. "We'll manage." The man shrugged, clearly unwilling to argue with a Witcher. "If you're truly bound that way, speak to the healer at the edge of the village. She's been asking for help. Says the dead won't stay buried." Dandelion froze halfway through his drink. "The dead? Again?" "Geralt, we just dealt with a banshee who thought she was an elven queen." "She wasn't a banshee," Geralt said mildly, "and I don't recall asking your opinion." The bard sighed dramatically. "You never do." The healer's hut lay beyond the pond, half hidden under snow and pine. Smoke rose from its chimney, mingling with the scent of burning sage. Geralt knocked once and entered. The woman inside was young but weary-eyed, her hands stained with herbs and soot. She looked up as they entered, relief plain on her face. "A Witcher," she said softly. "Thank the gods. I feared no one would come." "Tell me," Geralt said, leaning against the door frame. She hesitated, glancing toward the hearth. "It started a week past. Graves disturbed. Bodies missing. At first we thought wolves, but the ground showed no tracks. Then the villagers began dreaming, strange dreams of a woman calling their names. Now the missing have returned, but not as they were." "Returned?" Dandelion repeated, paling. "They wander the woods," the healer whispered, "pale, silent. Not corpses, not living either. When we try to approach, they vanish like mist." Geralt's expression hardened. "Where did the first disturbance happen? The villagers say it's cursed, elf ruins beneath it. I went once to bless the ground. I felt something. Watching." Geralt nodded. "You did well to stay away?" That evening he went alone, climbing the snow-covered hill, while Dandelion remained behind, composing what he claimed would be a dirge fit for a king's funeral, should the need arise. The barrow stood dark against the sunset, its stones cracked and ancient. The snow lay undisturbed, save for faint marks, footprints too light for any living man. The Witcher crouched, tracing them with gloved fingers. The impressions sank shallowly into the snow and ended abruptly a few paces from the entrance, as if the owners had simply dissolved into air. He drew his silver sword and whispered a sign. A faint shimmer lit the entrance, revealing the outline of runes carved long ago into the stone. Not human work, elven, delicate, and cruel. Inside, the barrow smelled of dust and rot. His footsteps echoed softly. The tunnel sloped downward, opening into a chamber lined with burial alcoves. Bones lay scattered, and from the far end came a faint humming, not unlike the sound he had heard in the keep of Lauren Vale. The hair on his neck rose. He approached cautiously. A figure stood at the center of the chamber, tall, robed in black, face hidden by a hood. It turned as he neared, and pale eyes gleamed within the shadow. "Another scavenger," the figure murmured, voice low and strange. "Or perhaps a seeker of truth." Geralt lifted his sword. "Neither. I'm looking for the dead." The figure tilted its head. "Then you found them." From the alcoves, shapes began to stir, the remains of the buried pulling themselves upright, their movements jerky and slow. The Witcher's medallion vibrated furiously. These were not ghouls nor wraiths. Something older animated them. "Who are you?" Geralt demanded. The hooded one stepped closer. "A servant of the old song," it said. "The same." She opened the way. "Witcher, I merely walk it." Aeliren's shadow again, her curse spreading, seeking new vessels. Geralt cast Igni. Flame burst from his hand, engulfing the corpses in a roar of fire. They shrieked as they burned, voices echoing off the stone. The robed figure did not move, only raised one pale hand and whispered. The fire dimmed. The smoke thickened, shaping itself into faces that laughed soundlessly. "Fire will not cleanse what was written in the first dawn," it said. "You cannot kill the song." Geralt lunged, blade flashing. The figure dissolved into mist, reforming behind him. It struck with a burst of cold that numbed his arm to the elbow. He turned, slashing blindly, and the silver edge tore through the robe. But there was no flesh beneath, only swirling shadow. He drew a second sign, Earden, and the circle of violet light flared around him. The creature recoiled, hissing. For a heartbeat, its form solidified. A man's face, ancient and cruel, carved with elven features. Geralt struck again, driving the blade through its chest. The light erupted outward, the chamber shaking with the force of it. When the Witcher staggered to his feet, the figure was gone. Only the echo of its words remained, whispering through the dark. "The song is not ended." He climbed from the barrow beneath a sky heavy with snow. The wind howled over the hills, carrying the faint strains of a woman's voice. That same melody, distant yet familiar. Back at the village, the healer waited at her door, lantern in hand. "Did you find what haunts us?" she asked. "For now," Geralt said quietly. "Burn the barrow, salt the ground, and tell your people not to dream near it." Dandelion emerged from the inn, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You look like death itself. Was it bad?" Geralt mounted Roach. "Bad enough." They left before dawn. As they rode, Dandelion, "A song that wakes the dead. I should never have thought music could be so dangerous."
Music's only sound, Geralt said. It's who listens that makes it dangerous. The bard nodded solemnly, then after a pause, "Still, if we survive this, I'm writing a ballad called The Witcher and the Song of the Dead." Geralt's mouth twitched. "Make it short." Snow fell thicker as they rode north, covering the tracks behind them. Somewhere beyond the forests, unseen and waiting, the echo of Aeliren's magic lingered, a melody that refused to fade, and though the wind swallowed all other sounds, Geralt could not shake the feeling that the song was following them, step by step, whispering his name across the long roads ahead. The northern forests stretched endless and cold, their trees dark sentinels beneath a sky the color of iron. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes, the kind that swallowed sound and turned the world to silence. Geralt rode at the front, Roach's breath steaming in the chill, Dandelion lagging behind, with his lute strapped awkwardly to his back, muttering every curse known to men of letters. They had crossed into Cadwyn 2 days prior. The land here bore the scars of recent skirmishes. Burned wagons half buried in frost, arrows jutting from the snow, the faint scent of death that even winter could not hide. No banners flew, no patrols marched, only ravens circling and waiting. By dusk, the wind had risen, and Geralt spotted the outline of a keep on the horizon, its towers black against the storm. "We'll shelter there," he said. Dandelion groaned, pulling his cloak tighter. An abandoned keep in the middle of nowhere? What could possibly go wrong? "Everything," Geralt said, "but I prefer dry boots." The keep stood on a rocky bluff overlooking a frozen river, its walls half crumbled but still imposing. The gate hung askew, and the courtyard beyond was filled with snowdrifts. They entered. The place smelled of old smoke and damp stone. Inside the main hall, they found a fire pit, still black, with ash. Someone had lived here recently, or tried to. Geralt examined the remnants of a meal, long frozen solid, and a rusted sword lying beside it. "Refugees," he murmured, "or deserters." Dandelion shivered. "Do you think they're still around?" "No," Geralt said, glancing toward the dark corners of the hall, "but something else might be." They built a fire, the flames crackling softly in the vast emptiness. Dandelion tuned his lute, plucking a tentative string. "You know," he said, "in a better story, this would be the part where a mysterious lady appears and offers us wine." Geralt smirked faintly. "In a better story, you'd know when to keep quiet." The bard sighed, but began to play softly anyway, the melody low and wistful. The notes seemed to fill the hall, echoing through the broken rafters. Geralt leaned against a pillar, half listening, half thinking. The events of Lauren Vale, the cursed barrow, the song of the dead, all threads in a web too large to see clearly. But the pattern was forming. He could feel it. As the fire burned low, fatigue crept in. Dandelion eventually slumped over his lute, snoring softly. Geralt remained awake, staring into the flames. The medallion at his throat was still. The night was quiet, too quiet. Then, faintly from beyond the walls, he heard it. A sound like a woman's voice, humming. He rose instantly, hand on his sword. The melody was soft, distant, but unmistakable. It wound through the air like mist, weaving around the hiss of snow. He stepped outside, the cold biting deep, and followed the sound toward the courtyard. There, standing in the drifting snow, was a figure, tall, cloaked in white, her hair a pale silver that shimmered in the moonlight. Aeliren. She was whole again, her body no longer spectral but solid, her beauty
She looked at him, and for a moment he saw neither malice nor triumph in her eyes, only weariness. "You destroy every song I try to sing," she said softly. "Why must you always silence beauty with your blade?" Geralt did not draw his sword. "Because your songs kill the innocent." She smiled faintly. "Innocence is a human lie. You breed, you conquer, you forget. You call yourselves builders, yet you bury every truth that doesn't fit your shape of the world." "I've heard this sermon before," Geralt said. "Usually ends in fire." "Then let it end differently," she whispered. "I offer peace, Witcher. Help me, and I will seal the hunt forever. Refuse, and they will come. Not for me, but for her." Her meaning was clear. Ciri. The wind howled between them, scattering snow. Geralt's eyes narrowed. "You've seen her again." "I see all who carry the elder blood," Aliren said. "She is hunted still. Every step she takes leaves cracks between the worlds. I can close them, but not without power, the same power you fear. You'd burn the world to heal it." "I'd burn a world that's already dying," she said fiercely. "Look around you. Men slaughter each other while your kings starve peasants to feed their wars. The world rots, Witcher. I would only cleanse it." Geralt took a step closer. "You speak like every mad sorcerer who's ever justified murder. You're not a goddess. You're a mistake that refuses to die." Her expression hardened. "Then die with your delusions." The snow exploded upward, blinding him. Magic struck the ground like lightning. He rolled aside, Igni flaring from his palm, flame cutting through the storm. Aelirin moved with impossible grace, her hand tracing sigils in the air. Shards of ice spun toward him. He deflected them with Quen, the shield flashing gold before shattering. They circled each other, predator and prey. Her power filled the night with light. Her voice rised. Geralt lunged, closing the distance, his silver blade catching her mid-strike. Sparks flew. She staggered, her spell faltering. "You can't win this," he said through clenched teeth. Her laughter was soft, cold. "Win? There's no winning, Witcher, only endings." She struck again, her hand blazing with white fire. It caught him full in the chest, hurling him backward into the snow. The world spun. Pain tore through him. When he struggled to rise, she stood over him, her expression unreadable. "Tell her," she said, her voice breaking. "Tell the child she cannot run forever. The song will find her." Then as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone, dissolving into mist that swirled away on the wind. Geralt lay still for a long time, listening to the storm fade. When he finally returned to the hall, Dandelion was awake, wide-eyed and pale. "By the gods, Geralt, I heard... What happened? You look like you wrestled a blizzard."
"In a way," Geralt said. He sank beside the fire, wincing. "She was here." Dandelion swallowed hard. "Aelirin?" He nodded. "She's not gone, and she's after Ciri." The bard sat heavily. "Then what do we do?" "We follow the trail," Geralt said. "It leads north. Always north." He stared into the fire again, his face grim. The flames danced and twisted, forming for an instant the shape of a woman's silhouette, then fading into smoke. Outside, the wind rose once more, carrying that faint, haunting melody. A song of endings, a song of blood and frost. Geralt closed his eyes, exhaustion tugging at him, but sleep brought no rest. In his dreams, he saw Ciri running through endless snow, the shadows of riders behind her, and ahead, a door of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. And through it all, the voice of Aelirin whispered, "The song is not ended." When dawn came, pale and cold,
Geralt and Dandelion mounted their horses once more and rode on. The world was still, but somewhere far beyond sight, the wild hunt stirred, restless in its slumber. Snow fell ceaselessly for 3 days as they rode north. The wind came howling from the mountains, carrying with it the sharp scent of pine and the promise of worse storms yet to come. The land changed as they went, forests giving way to open tundra, the soil hard and pale beneath its icy shroud. Wolves shadowed them at a distance, their eyes glowing faintly amber in the dim light. Dandelion grew quiet, which in itself was cause for concern. When at last he spoke, it was in a voice stripped of all theatrics. You think she meant it? That Ciri's being hunted again? Geralt didn't look at him. She's always hunted. That hasn't changed. But this song, the bard gestured vaguely, curse or whatever it is, it feels different. Like it's not just after her. Like it's after everything. Geralt nodded slowly. That's what makes it dangerous. They crossed the frozen river near dusk, its surface cracking ominously beneath the horses' hooves. On the far bank, a watchtower jutted from the snow like a broken tooth. A tattered banner flapped limply from its top, half buried under ice. When they approached, they saw signs of recent passage, tracks of boots and wagon wheels leading toward the mountains. Refugees? Dandelion asked. Or soldiers, Geralt said. Cadwin's still at war with itself. Every army leaves ghosts behind. They followed the trail until they came to a narrow gorge, the path winding between cliffs dusted in frost. Somewhere far ahead, faint torchlight flickered. Voices carried on the wind, harsh, guttural, foreign. Geralt reined in Roach and signaled for silence. He slid from the saddle, crouching low, eyes scanning the darkness. The torches belonged to a camp nestled against the cliff wall. Men in mismatched armor moved about, their breath fogging the air. Mercenaries, by the look of them. At their center, chained to a post, was a man in black robes. His head hung low, his wrists bound in iron glowing faintly blue. Magic dampeners, Geralt muttered. Dandelion frowned. A mage? Looks like it. Geralt's tone was flat. And not a willing guest. The bard shifted uneasily. You're not planning to... I am, Geralt said. Stay here. He moved like a shadow, slipping from rock to rock until he was behind the camp. 2 guards stood watch near the prisoner. They were speaking in the clipped tones of men who'd rather be anywhere else. Said he was summoning spirits, one muttered. Said the snow itself was alive. The other spat. He's mad, that one. Captain says we'll deliver him to the sorcerers in Ard Carré. Let them burn him. Geralt didn't wait to hear more. A blur of motion, a whisper of steel. Both men fell before they could draw breath. He dragged their bodies aside, then approached the prisoner. The man looked up as Geralt neared. His eyes were a startling shade of green, his face thin and pale, the skin marked with runes. A witcher, he rasped. I'd begun to think you were myths. Depends who you ask, Geralt said, cutting the chain with a single stroke. Who are you? Eldric, the mage said. I served in Ban Ard once until the lodge decided my research was inconvenient. What kind of research? Eldric's smile was thin. Portals, worlds, the veil between them. Geralt's expression hardened. You've been trying to open gates? The mage coughed a laugh. Trying? No, Witcher, someone already has. I've been following the trail she left behind, the elven woman, Aeliren. Geralt's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. You've seen her? In visions, Eldric said. She reaches across the worlds like a spider spinning her web. Each place she touches weakens the fabric of reality. Soon the barrier will fail. When that happens, the hunt will ride freely, and your girl, the one with the elder blood, will be their key. How do you know about her? The same way she does, Eldrick said softly. I hear the song. Before Geralt could reply, the sound of shouting rose from the camp. The bodies he had hidden had been found. Flames flared and men grabbed weapons, their voices echoing in the gorge. Time to go, Geralt said. They fled into the snow, arrows hissing past them. Dandelion's voice echoed faintly behind, a mix of curses and panicked prayers. When they finally reached the ridge above, the mercenaries had given up the chase, unwilling to brave the storm that had begun to rise. Eldrick leaned against a rock, breathing hard. She's heading for the Tower of the Circle, he said between gasps. The ruins on Lake Merk. The old mages built it where the worlds touch. If she completes her ritual there... She won't, Geralt interrupted. Eldrick met his gaze. You can't stop her alone. Maybe not, but I'll try. The mage gave a weary nod. Then I'll go with you. Dandelion groaned. Another sorcerer. Wonderful. Just what we needed. Geralt ignored him, looking north where the storm brewed, dark and violent. We ride at dawn. They camped in the lee of the ridge. Geralt slept little, his dreams filled with flashes of light and the sound of hooves striking ice. He saw Ciri again, her hair whipping in the wind as she ran across a frozen lake. Behind her came the riders, their armor black and glistening with frost, and above them singing. Elaren, her voice weaving the storm into melody. When he woke, the fire was out. The snow had deepened overnight, and the horizon was nothing but white. Eldrick was already awake, tracing runes into the ice with his finger. The symbols pulsed faintly blue. What are you doing? Geralt asked. Listening, the mage said. The song carries through the air. If I can find its rhythm, I can follow it to her. That melody kills. Eldrick smiled faintly. So do I. They rode until the land opened into a vast plain. In the far distance, a faint glimmer marked the lake, and above it, rising from the mist, the dark shape of a tower. Lightning danced around its crown, though no thunder followed. The Tower of the Circle, Dandelion breathed. I'd heard tales, but I thought it a ruin. It is, Eldrick said, but ruins remember, and she'll use that memory. The Witcher's medallion began to vibrate again, stronger than before. The air shimmered faintly, heavy with power. She's there, Geralt said, and as if in answer, the wind carried a sound, faint at first, then growing clearer. A song, soft, beautiful, and full of sorrow. The same melody that had haunted their steps from Lorn Vale to the mountains. Aileron's voice calling them onward. Geralt spurred Roach into motion. Snow swirled around them, the storm rising to meet their charge. The tower loomed larger with every heartbeat, its black stones gleaming like ice, and as they neared its shadow, the ground trembled beneath them, a rhythm like a heartbeat, or perhaps a drumbeat for the end of the world. The long road had led them here, to the edge of myth, and in Geralt's heart one thought burned bright and cold. Whatever waits inside, I will end it. The Tower of the Circle rose like a dark monolith above the frozen lake. Its foundations vanished into the ice, as though the world itself had tried to swallow it and failed. Lightning crawled across the heavens without thunder, and the clouds hung heavy, pressing low upon the earth. Geralt, Dandelion, and Eldrick approached through a wall of snow. The wind screamed across the plain, carrying shards of ice that cut the skin like knives. The Witcher's medallion thrummed so violently against his chest it felt alive. Every nerve in his body told him that the air here was wrong. Not merely cold, but alive with something ancient. The lake groaned under their horses' hooves. Cracks laced the surface like veins of blue light, pulsing faintly in time with the storm above. "Best dismount," Geralt said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "No sense taking a fall into that." Dandelion slid reluctantly from his horse, his cloak whipping around him. "I must say, of all the delightful destinations we've had, this one feels the least hospitable." Eldric, eyes fixed on the tower, did not respond. His lips moved soundlessly, tracing some incantation beneath his breath. At last he spoke. "She's inside. The wards are broken. Someone, or something, has already opened the path." Geralt drew his silver sword. The runes etched into its blade shimmered faintly blue. "Then let's finish this before she does." They crossed the last stretch of ice and reached the causeway that led to the tower gates. Massive doors, carved with symbols older than the human tongue, stood half open, their edges rimmed with frost. Beyond them darkness waited, vast and silent. As they entered, the wind died. The air grew heavy, thick with dust and the scent of old magic. Their footsteps echoed on the stone floor, each sound swallowed quickly by the void. Columns rose like the trunks of petrified trees, vanishing into the shadowed heights above. Dandelion whispered, "It feels like walking inside a grave." "It is," Eldric said softly. "This place was built by mages who tried to master the worlds. Most of them died here. Their souls never left." A flicker of movement caught Geralt's eye. He turned sharply. Shadows stirred along the walls, thin, elongated shapes that did not belong to any living being. They shifted when the light moved, bending unnaturally. "Wraiths," he muttered. Eldric nodded grimly. "Bound to the stones, drawn to her power." Geralt traced a circle with his hand. "Yrden." The sign flared to life beneath. The wraiths recoiled, their whispering fading to low hisses. For a heartbeat, the path ahead cleared. "Move," Geralt said, "quickly." They climbed the spiral stairs that wound around the tower's heart. The walls vibrated faintly, as if something vast pulsed within them. Higher and higher they went until the stair opened onto a wide hall beneath a domed ceiling of glass. The wind outside had stopped entirely. The air shimmered like the surface of a still pond. And in the center of the hall stood Aeliren. She was changed again. Her body glowed faintly with inner light, and her eyes burned the color of molten gold. Around her, a circle of runes blazed, floating above the floor, like constellations torn from the sky. "Witcher," she said softly, "you've come a long way to die." Geralt stepped forward. "I've come to stop you." Her lips curved in something almost tender. "You can't. The song has already begun." Eldric moved beside him, raising his hands. "Aeliren, you're unraveling the veil. If you finish this, you'll bring the hunt through." She turned her gaze on him. "Eldric," she said with faint amusement, "I remember you. The scholar who sought to measure infinity with numbers? Tell me, did you ever learn that the universe does not care for balance?" Lightning flared overhead, striking the glass dome and shattering it. Ice and shards rained down, but Aeliren's magic melted them before they touched her. The runes burned brighter. "The worlds are dying," she said, "but beyond the veil lies rebirth. I will open the gate, and through it will flow life unending, the life men stole from us." "You'll destroy everything," Geralt said. She smiled, sad and distant. Perhaps destruction is the truest form of creation. The ground trembled. The runes rose higher, spinning faster, the air thickening until every breath burned. Dandelion stumbled back. Eldrick shouted over the storm, "Geralt, the runes! Break the pattern! She's using 7. If one fails, the rest collapse." Geralt nodded once and charged. Aelorin's magic struck him like a wall, hurling him to his knees. Sparks danced across his armor. He rolled aside as a beam of light scorched the floor where he had stood. He drew the sign of Ard and unleashed it. The blast shattered one of the floating runes, its fragments bursting into silver fire. Aelorin screamed, the sound half fury, half pain. Eldrick seized the moment, casting a spell of his own. A chain of light coiled around her wrist, tightening. She tore at it, her power blazing. "Now, Witcher!" the mage cried. Geralt sprang forward. Another rune fell to his blade. The light faltered. For an instant, the tower itself seemed to groan. Cracks spidered across the floor, but Aelorin recovered with terrifying speed. With a sweep of her hand, she unleashed a wave of frost that turned the air to glass. Eldrick was caught full in the chest, hurled backward. His body struck a pillar and crumpled. Dandelion screamed his name, but Geralt had no time to look. The final runes were spinning wildly, light pouring from them like blood. He pushed through the freezing wind, every muscle screaming. Aelorin's song rose, not words, but a melody of power and sorrow, so beautiful it hurt to hear. It wrapped around his mind like chains of silk. He stumbled, the world blurring. For a moment, he was somewhere else entirely. A field of flowers under a violet sky, the air warm, the scent of lilac and gooseberries on the wind, and standing before him smiling was Yennefer. "Geralt," she whispered, "lay down your sword. It's over." The Witcher closed his eyes. The illusion was perfect, the voice, the face, the scent, but the medallion trembled, faint beneath the false peace. He opened his eyes again, and Yennefer was gone. Aelorin stood in her place. Geralt's blade flashed. He struck the last rune. Light and sound became one. The tower split from crown to root, fire and frost, tearing through the stone. The lake below erupted, waves of boiling water crashing outward. When the storm cleared, the tower was gone. Only ruins remained, half buried in the ice. Geralt lay amid the wreckage, the air filled with the hiss of steam. Pain radiated through every limb. Nearby Dandelion crawled from the rubble, coughing violently. "Geralt?" the bard croaked. "Are we dead?" "Not yet," Geralt said hoarsely. Of Aelorin there was no sign, only fragments of light drifting upward, vanishing into the gray sky. Eldrick lay motionless near a shattered column. Geralt knelt beside him. The mage's eyes fluttered open for a moment. "Did we stop her?" "For now," Geralt said. Eldrick smiled faintly. "Then it's enough." His eyes closed and he was still. The Witcher rose slowly, looking toward the horizon. The storm had passed, but the air still hummed with lingering magic. Somewhere far away, faint and fleeting, he thought he heard it. A single note of that same song carried on the wind. Aelorin was gone, but the melody remained. Geralt sheathed his sword and turned away from the ruins. "Come on, Dandelion," he said. "We've got a long road south." The bard stared at the wreckage. "You think it's over?" Geralt didn't answer. They mounted their weary horses, the snow crunching softly beneath the hooves. The lake lay silent behind them, reflecting the first pale light of dawn, and as they rode into that cold new day, The Witcher could not shake the feeling that the story, like the song, was far from ended. The ruins of the Tower of the Circle faded into the storm behind them, swallowed by mist and distance. For 3 days, Geralt and Dandelion rode south, saying little. The wind carried the sharp tang of magic even now, as though the air itself remembered the violence. The lake, once frozen, now steamed faintly, a scar upon the land that would never quite heal. The bard, wrapped in his cloak and misery, finally broke the silence. You know, Geralt, there's something unnatural about how often we walk away from places no sane man would approach. I'm beginning to suspect we're cursed. Not we, Geralt said, just me. Ah, but I share your company. By association, the curse extends, Dandelion said with mock dignity. Misery loves poets, after all. Geralt allowed the ghost of a smile. It faded quickly. His thoughts were elsewhere. On Aeliren's last words, on the melody that refused to leave his mind. He had silenced her body, yes, but her power lingered. It was into the frost that fell too heavily, in the unease of the ravens circling the sky, in the way his medallion still trembled faintly, as if anticipating what was to come. They found shelter on the 4th night in a forester's cabin half buried in snow. The hearth was cold, but Geralt soon coaxed a fire to life. The warmth brought a fragile peace. Dandelion unpacked his lute, plucked at the strings, and began to hum a tune. A soft, uncertain melody that was neither cheerful nor mournful. After a while he said, I've been thinking. What if she wasn't lying? Geralt looked up. About what? About sealing the hunt, about wanting peace. She seemed sincere. She was sincere, Geralt said. So are all zealots. The bard sighed. You've a gift for finding tragedy in every truth. Geralt leaned back, watching the flames twist. It's not a gift. It's experience. Outside, the wind shifted. The horses stamped uneasily in the shed. Geralt's medallion vibrated, faintly but enough. He was on his feet in an instant. What is it? Dandelion whispered. Something's coming. A heartbeat later, the door shuddered under a blow. Wood splintered. The fire guttered, shadows leaping. Geralt drew his sword. The door burst open and a figure stumbled in, cloaked, half frozen, collapsing onto the floor. Help, the stranger rasped. Geralt lowered his blade slightly. The man was no monster, human, gaunt and pale, his eyes wide with terror. He clutched a satchel to his chest, as though it were life itself. Dandelion hurried forward, helping him to the fire. Easy, friend, easy. You look as if the wild hunt itself. The man flinched violently at the words. Don't say that, he gasped. They're listening. Geralt's voice was calm but sharp. Who? The man swallowed. The riders, they're not gone. You think you closed the path, Witcher, but they're still here, trapped, hungry. They ride in dreams now. Geralt's jaw tightened. Who are you? Just a messenger, the man said, fumbling with the satchel. I carry records from Ban Ard, research the mages thought destroyed, the elves, the portals, the conjunctions. It's all returning. He opened the satchel and drew out a bundle of parchments. Symbols covered every inch, diagrams of spheres intersecting, runes of containment and summoning. Geralt recognized some from Aeliren's circle, others far older. What do you want from me? He asked. Not want, the man whispered. Warn. The hunt seeks her still, the girl, the child of the elder blood. They can't cross freely, but they can touch through dream, through song. Every time her name is spoken in the old tongue, they draw nearer. Ciri. Always Ciri. Geralt felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. Where did you hear this? In dreams, the man said, his eyes rolled back, unfocused. They sing to me, the same song she sang. It never stops. His voice broke off. He stiffened, gasped, and went still. Dandelion stumbled backward, horrified. Geralt? The Witcher was already moving. He pressed 2 fingers to the man's throat. No pulse. But the air around the body shimmered. Then from the dead man's mouth, a whisper escaped. Soft, melodic, heartbreakingly beautiful. Aileron's song. Geralt drew a sign in the air, Igni flaring to life, but the melody persisted. The flames dimmed instead of flaring, bowing before the invisible force. Dandelion, Geralt said quietly, outside, now. The bard didn't argue. He fled into the snow, clutching his lute like a child might a charm. Geralt remained, standing over the corpse. The song grew louder, filling the cabin until the walls themselves seemed to hum. Shadows danced along the ceiling, coalescing into a form. A woman's outline, delicate and translucent. You can burn the tower, Witcher, the voice said, but not the memory. You can silence a singer, but not the song. Geralt didn't move. You're dead. The shadow smiled. Death is only another threshold. You of all beings should know. Monsters never die. They wait. Then you're waiting for nothing, Geralt said and swung. The silver blade cut through the apparition. The song shattered into silence. The fire flared again, bright and pure. The body lay still once more, its expression strangely peaceful. Outside, the wind had fallen silent. Dandelion approached hesitantly, his face pale. Is it done? For now. The bard glanced at the corpse. He came all this way just to die in our doorway. Maybe that was the point. They buried the man at dawn beneath a stand of fir trees where the snow was thin. Geralt built a cairn of stones and carved a simple rune upon the top, an old sign for rest. When the task was done, Dandelion asked quietly, "What did she say to you?" "Nothing new," Geralt said, "that nothing ever really ends." They rode on. The forests gave way to plains dusted in frost, the horizon stretching endless. As they traveled, they passed villages half empty, fields untended, people who watched from behind closed shutters. War had stripped the land bare, and by evening they reached a crossroads where an old shrine to Melitele leaned sideways under its burden of snow. Geralt stopped, brushing the frost from the carving. Someone had left a sprig of dried flowers, lilac and gooseberries. He stared at them for a long moment, lost in thought. Dandelion said softly, "You think she left it?" "Maybe," Geralt murmured. "Maybe she's closer than we think." Night came swiftly. They camped by the roadside, the fire burning low. Above, the stars shimmered cold and distant. Dandelion played softly, his song gentle and weary. When the last note faded, Geralt said almost to himself, "Aileron was right about one thing. The world's rotten." Dandelion poked the fire. "And what does a witcher do when the world rots?" Geralt stared into the flames, eyes reflecting the light like molten gold. "He keeps walking." And so he did. When dawn broke, they were already on the road again, the wind carrying faint echoes of a melody neither man could name. A tune that seemed to follow them, haunting and eternal, as though the long roads themselves were singing. Days bled into one another. The cold no longer bit. It simply became part of them. Frost crusted the edges of Geralt's armor, and Dandelion's fingers grew raw upon his lute strings. Yet the Witcher pressed on without complaint. The land around them turned wild and pale. Forest gave way to rocky hills, and the sky hung heavy and bruised, low enough to brush with a raised hand. They rode through the desolation of Cadwyn's borderlands, where villages stood deserted, the war having swallowed their men and burned their fields. Once or twice they found signs of life, smoke from a distant chimney, a child's footprint in the snow, but no one came forth. Fear ruled these lands now. Dandelion broke the silence first, as he always did. "Do you ever tire of this?" he asked. "The road, the cold, the endless pursuit of someone else's curse?"
Tired is not the word for it. Then what word fits? Habit? The bard gave a short, humorless laugh. Habit. You make heroism sound like a bad habit picked up in youth. It is. They came upon the remnants of a battlefield as the light began to fail. Broken spears jutted from the snow like withered stalks. Shields lay half buried, their emblems rubbed away by wind and time. Crows picked at what the frost had spared. "Cadwyn and Redania again?" Geralt said, scanning the torn banners. "No victors here." "Just ghosts," Dandelion murmured. As they rode between the corpses, the Witcher's medallion began to quiver. The faint tremor grew stronger with every step until Roach tossed her head and snorted. Geralt halted. "Dismount." The bard obeyed without question. Another curse? Something worse? The snow stirred. From beneath it rose pale shapes, one by one, like sleepers waking. The dead soldiers stood, their eyes burning with a dull blue light. They moved without sound, without purpose, but the air around them pulsed with power, the residue of battle and pain, twisted by something unseen. Dandelion took a step back. "Wraiths again?" "No," Geralt said, drawing his silver sword. "Not wraiths, puppets." He could sense it now, the familiar thrum of magic, old and melodic. The dead men began to hum softly, their broken voices forming a single, terrible harmony. The song. "Aeliren," Geralt growled under his breath. He drew a sign in the air, Írden flashing to life. The corpses hesitated, their steps faltering as they crossed its boundary. Geralt struck first, his blade cutting through the nearest soldier. The body fell, lifeless once more. But as it did, another took its place, singing louder. "Geralt," Dandelion shouted, retreating. "What do we do?" "Stay behind the circle." The Witcher moved like a storm, cutting through the ranks. Yet for every body that fell, the melody strengthened. The snow around them began to lift, swirling into a spiral of sound and frost. Then a voice joined the chorus, clear, sorrowful, unmistakably her. "White Wolf," he turned. Aeliren stood among the dead, her form half shadow, half light, her expression calm. "Did you think the veil would hold me?" "You're dead," he said. She smiled faintly. "Death is only another road." Her hands rose and the soldiers knelt as one. "You buried my song in fire, Witcher, but it takes root, even in ashes. Can you not feel it?" "The world listens, the world remembers." Geralt lifted his sword, its silver edge catching the dim light. "If the world remembers, it'll remember who stopped you." She tilted her head, almost sadly. "You cannot stop what was begun before your kind learned to speak." The ground shook. From beneath the snow, black veins spread like cracks in glass. Blue fire pulsed within them, and the hum of power deepened until it became a roar. Geralt struck. The blade passed through her body as though through mist. She vanished, only to reappear behind him, her voice at his ear. "You chase ghosts, while your destiny runs free. The child you seek follows her own path. You will not find her before I do." Rage flared through him, sharp and cold. He swung again, this time with Igni. Fire burst from his hand, searing the air. Aeliren shrieked, her shape flickering, The blue fire dimmed. "Go back," he hissed. "Go back to your grave." Her face twisted, the sorrow gone, replaced by fury. "You think you can banish me? Foolish man. I am the memory of what your world destroyed, and memory does not die." With that, she vanished again. The corpses collapsed, their song dying mid-breath. The silence that followed was absolute. Geralt stood in the stillness, chest heaving, steam rising from his armor. Dandelion approached carefully, his voice trembling. Was that truly her, or what's left of her? Then what now? Geralt looked down at the fallen soldiers, their faces peaceful in death. "Now she's hunting Ciri. We follow." They rode through the night. The moon rose cold and distant, casting the snow in shades of silver. Dandelion said nothing. Even he understood that words were useless now. Geralt's thoughts turned inward, to the girl who had vanished into the storm years ago, to the promise he had made and broken too many times. By dawn, they reached the foothills. The mountains loomed ahead, vast and cruel. Smoke curled faintly from a distant pass, sign of life, or perhaps the opposite. Geralt stopped, scanning the horizon. His medallion stirred again, faint but certain. "She's near," he said. "Ciri?" "Ailerin?" Dandelion groaned. "Of course she is. You ever think of taking a quieter profession, Geralt? Goat herding, maybe?" Geralt mounted Roach. "Goat herding doesn't pay." They followed the pass into the mountains. The path narrowed, hemmed in by cliffs that dripped with ice. By evening, the world had turned blue with twilight. Then, at last, they saw it, a glow upon the mountainside, faint and wavering, like a lantern carried by a ghost. They approached cautiously. The glow came from a cave mouth half hidden by snow. Inside, the air shimmered with magic. Geralt dismounted and turned to Dandelion. "Stay here." "Not this time," the bard said. "If you're walking into another cursed ruin, you'll need someone to write about it." Geralt gave him a long look, then nodded once. "Fine, but stay behind me." They entered the cave. The walls glittered with frost that pulsed faintly blue. At its heart lay a pool of still water, perfectly round. Above it, hovering like a star trapped in ice, floated a single crystal. Its light filled the cavern with shifting patterns. Geralt stepped closer. The medallion at his throat began to hum violently. He could feel it, the residue of Aelerin's power. Then from the pool, a voice rose. Not Aelerin's this time, but another, familiar, achingly so. Geralt, he froze. The water rippled, and from its depths a face appeared, Ciri's face. Her expression was distant, her eyes unfocused, as though she looked through him rather than at him. "She's coming," she said softly. "You can't stop her. She's part of me now." The image dissolved, leaving only silence and the echo of her words. Dandelion whispered, "What in all the gods' names was that?" Geralt sheathed his sword slowly. A warning? They left the cave without another word. The storm had risen again, and the wind carried that haunting melody once more. Aelerin's song followed them down the mountain, threading through the snow like a promise and a curse. Geralt did not look back. He only whispered to the storm, "I'll find her first." The wind answered with a whisper of its own, cold and unending. The storm did not cease for 3 days. It came down from the mountains with a roar, swallowing forest and sky alike, driving snow so thick it blinded both man and beast. Geralt and Dandelion sought shelter wherever the land allowed, hollowed rocks, burnt cottages, the black ribs of ruined wagons, but the cold was relentless, creeping into their bones like a living thing.
On the fourth morning, the wind fell still. The snow hung in the air like dust in sunlight. The world was white and quiet. Geralt rose from his makeshift camp, brushed frost from his shoulders, and looked northward. Beyond the dead forest, faint and spectral, he saw a column of light piercing the sky. "She's opened another gate," he said. Dandelion, hunched beside the embers of a dying fire, groaned. "Another one? Does she ever rest?" "Not until she gets what she wants." "Which is?" "The same thing the hunt wants," Geralt said grimly. "Ciri." They broke camp and rode hard. The air trees stood twisted, their trunks bent like supplicants, and the snow beneath them shimmered faintly, shot through with veins of blue. Time seemed to stutter. Shadows moved against the sun, breaths came out of rhythm. By noon they reached the edge of an old battlefield. Here the snow lay thin and gray, soaked with long frozen blood. Spears and bones protruded from the drifts, and at the center of the field stood a stone circle half buried in ice. The light rose from its heart, reaching toward the heavens. Geralt dismounted. The medallion at his throat buzzed furiously. "Stay with the horses," he said. Dandelion frowned. "You're not going in there alone again." "You can't follow me where this leads." "Geralt." But the Witcher was already walking toward the stones. The air grew heavy with every step. When he crossed the boundary of the circle, the world shifted. The color drained from the sky. The snow beneath his boots turned to ash. The light from the pillar pulsed faster, in time with his heartbeat. And there, standing in the midst of it, was Aeliren. She was no longer ethereal nor wreathed in flame. She was simply a woman now, pale, weary, her cloak torn and her eyes dark with exhaustion. Yet the power around her was immense, bending the air like heat. "You're persistent," she said softly. Geralt stopped a few paces away. "You're killing the world. I'm trying to save it." "By tearing it apart?" A faint smile touched her lips. "You mistake endings for destruction. You can't heal what refuses to die." He circled slowly, blade drawn. "And Ciri? Is she part of your salvation?" "She is the key," Aeliren said. "The bridge between what was and what must come. Her blood can sing the world anew. She's not your tool. She's not yours either." Her gaze sharpened, and for a heartbeat, Geralt saw something human in her expression. Fear. Maybe even guilt. "I didn't choose this," she whispered. "The hunt rides again because the worlds decay. They seek warmth." "If I close the gate, the dying stops." Geralt shook his head. "You can't close it, you'll only make another. Then perhaps it's time for new hands to shape creation." She raised her hand, light flared, and the runes carved into the stones came alive. The ground trembled. Geralt lunged, but the force of her spell threw him back. He struck the ice hard, pain blooming down his spine. Aeliren began to sing. The sound was unlike any melody of mortal origin. It filled the air with unbearable beauty, notes that vibrated in the marrow, chords that tore the heart open. Around her the stone circle lifted from the ground, rising into the air like a crown of fire. The light reached its peak, tearing the clouds asunder. Geralt forced himself to his feet, teeth clenched. He could see shapes forming within the light, riders cloaked in frost, spectral steeds rearing, the vanguard of the wild hunt pressing against the veil. "Not again," he snarled. He cast Igni. Fire roared from his hands, striking the runes. One by one the symbols cracked, dimmed, and went dark. The light wavered. Aeliren faltered mid-song. Her eyes snapped open, fury blazing. "You would doom your own world To preserve its misery? Geralt advanced, sword ready. It's not my world I'm saving, just the people still in it. She spread her arms. Then come, Witcher, end it, as you end all things. They clashed in the circle of stone. Steel met sorcery, fire met frost. The air howled with their fury. Geralt moved through the storm like a creature born of battle, every strike calculated, every dodge instinctive. Aeliren's power shattered the ground, flinging shards of rock and ice into the air. He struck once, twice, silver slicing through her illusions, scattering her form like smoke. Yet every time she fell, she reformed, her song rising higher, wilder. "Why do you fight me?" she cried. "We are both relics, both forsaken by the world we protect." He drove her back against the heart of the circle. Her hand caught his wrist, searingly cold. Frost spread across his armor, creeping up his arm. "You can't kill me," she whispered. "You can only choose where the song ends." "Then I'll end it here." He drove the sword forward through her chest. The light flared blindingly bright, and her voice broke off in a final, perfect note. The runes shattered. The sky tore open, and a wave of energy rippled outward, flattening the snow for miles. When the light faded, Aeliren was gone. Nothing remained but silence. Geralt fell to one knee, gasping. His hands shook, his vision blurred. The medallion at his throat finally stilled. The air was quiet again, truly quiet for the first time in weeks. Behind him, footsteps crunched. Dandelion approached cautiously, his face pale. "Is it over?" Geralt nodded, though the motion felt heavy. "It's over." They stood together at the edge of the shattered circle, watching as the last threads of magic drifted into the sky like smoke. "What happens now?" the bard asked. Geralt looked north, toward the mountains where the wind howled like distant laughter. "Now, the world goes on, it always does." Dandelion gave a small, tired smile. "And us?" Geralt sheathed his sword. "We follow the road." The bard glanced once more at the ruins. "You think she's truly gone? No one ever truly is?" the Witcher said. They rode until night fell, leaving the broken circle behind. The moon rose pale and thin, gleaming over the snow. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled, long and low. As they descended from the ridge, the wind shifted, carrying a faint whisper, a single note of the song, soft as breath. It faded almost immediately, but Geralt heard it. He didn't look back. The long road stretched before them, dark and endless, and he rode into it without hesitation. The storm had passed, but the sky still glowed faintly where the gate had once been. The world was quiet again, for now. Yet the Witcher knew the silence of fairy tales never lasted. It was only a pause before the next song began. Dawn crept slowly across the highlands, staining the snow with the faintest blush of gold. The storm had spent its fury, leaving a silence so vast it seemed the world itself held its breath. Geralt and Dandelion rode through that stillness, the crunch of hooves on frost the only sound. The air was clean now, sharp as steel. Each breath felt like swallowing winter. For the first time in many days, no song haunted the wind. The melody that had shadowed their steps since Lauren Vale was gone, the Witcher's medallion lay quiet against his chest. But peace, he knew, was only the shallow calm that comes after a storm. Beneath it things stirred. They always did. Dandelion rode hunched in his saddle, a blanket wrapped about his shoulders, looking for all the world, like a miserably plucked bird. "If I ever write of this," he muttered, I'll make sure to omit the parts involving frostbite, hunger, and the general misery of traveling with a man who never laughs." Geralt said nothing. He was studying the horizon, the long sweep of the valley below, the black scars of burned villages, the faint smoke that marked where men still clung to life. Finally, Dandelion sighed. "You're thinking of her again, aren't you?" Geralt's reply was simple. "Always." They rode until the sun stood low in the west. In the distance, a thin plume of smoke marked a village, one that still lived. The roofs were patched with snow, but a line of washing flapped in the cold wind. Dogs barked as they approached, and children peeked from behind fences. The war had passed lightly here. The scars were faint. An inn stood at the crossroads, its sign creaking. The hare and hawk, warm light spilled from the windows. Geralt pushed through the door first, Dandelion at his heels, and for a moment the noise inside, laughter, clatter, the clink of the innkeeper, a stout woman with a scar across her brow, looked up. "By the gods, a witcher. Haven't seen one in years." "Count yourself lucky," Geralt said. "Depends on your coin." She smiled. "What'll it be? Food? And something to drink?" They ate in a corner by the fire, silent save for the creak of chairs and the hum of Dandelion's soft playing. The warmth sank into their bones, a comfort so rare it felt undeserved. Outside night fell like ink, and the wind whispered around the eaves. When the plates were empty and the fire burned low, the bard leaned back. "So, is this it? The end of our grand adventure? No more cursed towers, no more undead maidens?" Geralt looked into the flames. "For now?" Dandelion raised an eyebrow. "That's not exactly reassuring." "It's the truth." The bard gave a rueful laugh. "You really should try lying sometimes. It's kinder." The witcher didn't answer. His eyes had gone distant again, the color of old gold in the firelight. After a time he rose. "I'll check the stables." Outside the air was bitter. Stars burned above, cold and clear. Roach stamped her hooves and snorted as he entered, her breath misting in the lantern glow. Geralt ran a hand down her neck, murmuring softly. Then he heard it. Faint, almost lost in the wind. A note. Just one. It hung there, trembling in the air, like a drop of glass. Then another joined it, soft and sorrowful. The witcher froze. His medallion shivered against his chest. From the darkness beyond the stables came a figure, cloaked, hood drawn low. The shape was slight, almost childlike. Geralt's hand went to his sword. "Who's there?" The figure stopped. Slowly the hood fell back. Silver hair gleamed in the starlight. Ciri. She looked older, taller, sterner, her eyes colder than he remembered, but there was no mistaking her. Geralt took a step forward. "Ciri." Her gaze met his, and for a heartbeat the air between them seemed to hold the whole weight of time. Then she smiled. "You found me," she said. "I never stopped looking." For an instant, the cold, the war, the long roads, all of it fell away. He reached for her shoulder. His fingers brushed the fabric of her cloak and passed through it. The illusion rippled. Ciri's image flickered like candlelight. Her smile faded. "I can't stay," she whispered. "The worlds still bleed into one another." "She's not gone." "Ailerin?" Ciri nodded. "Her song lingers. It calls to me, to all of us with elder blood." Geralt's voice was quiet but fierce. "Then we'll find her again. End it properly." "You can't," Ciri said. "Not without crossing where I've gone." Her image wavered again. "You have to let me go, Geralt." "No." Her eyes softened. "You always were stubborn." The illusion dimmed. The last thing he saw was her smile. Not sorrowful this time, but something gentler. Then the air fell silent once more. Geralt stood for a long while, the lantern guttering at his side. When he finally turned, Dandelion stood at the door, pale and speechless. "She was here," the bard said softly. "She was a vision?" Geralt replied. Dandelion swallowed. "And yet, you believed her?" "I did." They left the village at dawn. The road wound south through thawing fields, where patches of grass poked through the snow. The world seemed almost alive again. The first hesitant breath after a long, cold death. Dandelion tried to speak once or twice, but stopped himself. He understood, perhaps, that some silences were sacred. When the sun climbed high, Geralt said quietly, "There's work yet, monsters to kill, promises to keep." "Ah," Dandelion said, mustering a smile. "The glamorous life of the Witcher continues." Geralt allowed himself a faint smirk. "It does." They rode on. The wind carried no songs now, only the whisper of the thawing land, the creak of saddles, the rhythm of hooves. Somewhere beyond the horizon, spring waited, fragile, and though he knew the long roads would never end, Geralt of Rivia rode them willingly, for in their endless turning, in the quiet between storms and songs, there was purpose still. The world had changed. The stories would twist again, as they always did. But for this moment, beneath the cold sun of a waking land, the white wolf rode onward, his shadow stretching long upon the road, a man bound to no destiny but his own. Behind him, faint and fleeting, the wind caught a single note of music, not Aelorin's lament, not the hunt's call, but Dandelion's voice, soft and clear, singing of heroes who walked the long roads of fairy tales and never quite found their ending. Geralt smiled, the first true smile in many days, and did not